What happens when a commander refuses to lead from behind? What if the man giving orders is also the first one through the door, the first to pull the trigger, the first to face the bullets? Meet Major Heston Russell, the Australian Special Air Service officer who turned every rule of modern warfare upside down. While other commanders sat in safe tactical centers pushing buttons and watching screens, Russell was stacking bodies in the darkness of Afghanistan's most brutal kill zones. 0300 hours, pitch-black compounds, Taliban fighters armed to the teeth. And this man, he went in first, every single time. The Americans couldn't believe it. The Taliban couldn't stop it. November Squadron became a legend whispered in fear across Uruzgan Province. Over 100 direct action raids, midnight assaults conducted in total silence, targets eliminated before they even knew death was in the room. This wasn't warfare. This was surgical violence perfected to an art form. But here's what they don't tell you. Here's the part that will make your blood run cold. Russell didn't just lead missions. He redefined what it means to be a Tier 1 operator. Quad-eye night vision, suppressed weapons, attack helicopters firing danger close while his team was still on the ground. 12-minute compound clearances that left American Special Forces shaking their heads in disbelief. You think you know elite soldiers? You think Navy SEALs are the apex? Wait until you hear what the Australians were doing in the shadows. Wait until you discover why the Taliban feared the bearded ghosts more than airstrikes. Why American operators who worked alongside Russell came back changed, unsettled, questioning everything they thought they knew about combat. This is the story of the Alpha Commander, the man who led from the front of the kill chain. The officer who proved that the deadliest weapon on any battlefield isn't technology. It's a leader willing to be the first man through the breach. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will shatter every Hollywood myth you've ever believed about modern warfare. The truth is darker, faster, and infinitely more brutal than anything you've imagined. The compound door explodes inward at 0300 hours. Dust and smoke fill the fatal funnel. Through the green grain of quad-eye night vision, Major Heston Russell moves like a predator entering a kill box. He is not behind his men. He is not coordinating from a safe distance. He is the first man through the breach, rifle up, finger on the trigger, making split-second decisions that separate life from death. This is not leadership from a desk. This is command at the edge of a muzzle flash. Welcome to the world of Australia's most aggressive squadron commander, a man who redefined what it means to lead special forces in the most brutal theater of the global war on terror. While other officers coordinated from tactical operations centers, Russell was stacking bodies in the darkness of Afghanistan's most dangerous compounds. His philosophy was simple and terrifying in its purity. If you send men into the kill zone, you go first. But this story is not about sacrifice or nobility. This is about pure tactical dominance. This is about a military professional who treated combat like a high-stakes chess game played with live ammunition, where every move was calculated for maximum efficiency and zero mercy. The enemy did not fear the technology. They feared the bearded ghost who led the midnight raids with surgical precision and overwhelming violence. The year 2010 marked a turning point in Afghanistan. The Taliban had grown bold, embedding themselves in complex fortified compounds across Uruzgan Province. Standard military doctrine called for siege tactics, artillery bombardment, and slow, methodical clearance. The Australian Special Air Service Regiment had a different approach. They would hit fast, hit hard, and hit with such overwhelming force that resistance would collapse before it could organize. At the tip of this spear was November Squadron, and leading November Squadron was a young major who would become legendary among both allies and enemies. Heston Russell did not look like a bureaucrat in uniform. Standing over 6 feet tall, weighing close to 100 kilograms of combat-hardened muscle, he embodied the physical ideal of a Tier 1 operator. 10 years of relentless training had sculpted him into a weapon. But physicality alone does not make a squadron commander. What separated Russell from other officers was his understanding of the kill chain, the seamless integration of intelligence, firepower, and human violence that turns a raid from chaos into art. The mechanics of a direct action raid are simple in theory, but catastrophically difficult in execution. Intelligence identifies a high-value target. Planning determines approach vectors, breach points, and extraction routes. Assets are positioned, snipers on overwatch, attack helicopters circling above, ground assault teams ready to breach. Then comes the moment of violence, the explosive entry where everything can go wrong in a fraction of a second. This is where most commanders stay behind, monitoring radio traffic, coordinating the pieces. Russell went in first. His tactical philosophy rejected the American model of safety-first leadership. While U.S. Special Operations Forces increasingly relied on technology, standoff weaponry, and risk mitigation, Russell embraced direct confrontation. His weapon of choice was the Heckler & Koch 416 rifle, suppressed for silent operations, equipped with advanced optics for precision shots in low light. But the rifle was just a tool. The real weapon was his ability to read a battlefield in real time, to process information faster than the enemy could react, to turn confusion into controlled aggression. The compounds of Uruzgan Province were death traps, multi-room structures with narrow corridors, hidden fighting positions, and civilians mixed with combatants. Traditional clearance doctrine called for methodical room-by-room progression with constant communication. Russell's teams moved differently. They operated in near-total radio silence, relying on hand signals and telepathic coordination developed through thousands of hours of training. When they hit a compound, they did not announce themselves. They became a silent wave of violence that swept through the structure before the enemy could mount a defense. One mission in particular showcased this lethal efficiency. Intelligence had identified a Taliban commander operating from a fortified compound in northern Uruzgan. The target was protected by multiple layers of security, outer guards, reinforced doors, and a network of fighting positions designed to channel attackers into kill zones. American doctrine would call for a siege or precision airstrike. Russell planned a midnight assault with his squadron leading the breach. The insertion was textbook precision. Helicopters dropped the assault force 3 kilometers from the target under cover of darkness. The team moved on foot through enemy territory, navigating by night vision and intimate knowledge of the terrain. Snipers took up overwatch positions on the high ground, their Barrett M82A1 rifles ready to eliminate any threats before the assault began. Attack helicopters circled at altitude, their thermal sensors tracking heat signatures inside the compound. Everything was choreographed for maximum violence in minimum time. Russell led the stack to the breach point. Behind him were operators he had trained personally, men who moved with the same aggressive precision that defined his leadership style. The explosive charge detonated with a sharp crack that shattered the pre-dawn silence. The door disintegrated. Russell entered the fatal funnel without hesitation, his rifle tracking left while his number 2 covered right. The interior was a maze of corridors and doorways, each one a potential ambush point. They cleared it in under 12 minutes. The speed was inhuman. room after room fell in synchronized bursts of suppressed gunfire. The enemy never had time to organize a defense. By the time they understood they were under attack, the Australians were already moving to the next objective. Russell personally cleared 3 rooms, engaging multiple targets at close range with the cold efficiency of a professional operator. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. See the threat, eliminate the threat, move forward. This was combat distilled to its purest form. But speed alone does not explain the success. What made Russell's teams devastating was their ability to integrate supporting assets in real time. When the assault team encountered a fortified position too dangerous to breach directly, Russell called in danger close fire support. Apache attack helicopters unleashed 30mm cannon fire within 50 meters of friendly forces, close enough that the shock waves rattled teeth and the heat from explosions singed beards. The fortified position ceased to exist. The assault continued without pause. The Taliban commander was located in a reinforced bunker beneath the main compound. Standard procedure would call for negotiation or siege tactics. Russell ordered a breach. Explosive charges blew the entrance open. His team descended into the darkness, night vision turning the underground tunnel into a green-tinted nightmare. The commander and his bodyguards went down in the confined space, neutralized so quickly they never fired a shot. The entire operation from breach to extraction took under 30 minutes. By the time reinforcements arrived, the Australians were gone, leaving only bodies and silence. This was not an isolated incident. November Squadron under Russell's command conducted over 100 direct action missions during their rotation in Afghanistan. The operational tempo was relentless. Intelligence would identify a target. Planning would take hours, not days. The mission would execute that same night. Then the cycle would repeat. Some weeks saw 5 or 6 raids, each one a high-stakes gamble where one mistake could mean catastrophic casualties. Russell thrived in this environment. His ability to manage the kill chain extended beyond the trigger pull. He understood that modern warfare is a system of interconnected pieces: intelligence gathering, air support coordination, ground maneuver, and medical evacuation. A squadron commander must orchestrate all of them simultaneously while making life and death decisions under fire. Russell did this better than almost anyone in theater. His raids became case studies in tactical excellence, studied by Allied Special Operations Forces for their precision and aggression. The physical toll of this operational tempo was staggering. Operators went days without real sleep, living on combat stimulants and adrenaline. Equipment degraded rapidly in the harsh Afghan environment. Bodies broke down under the constant strain of carrying heavy gear through mountainous terrain and violent close-quarters combat. But Russell demanded perfection. If an operator could not keep pace, they were rotated out. November Squadron was not a place for the merely competent. It was a collection of apex predators led by an alpha who set the standard through personal example. One aspect of Russell's leadership that separated him from other commanders was his integration of tactical working dogs into direct action raids. Military working dogs are force multipliers in combat, capable of detecting explosives, tracking fleeing targets, and engaging enemy combatants with terrifying effectiveness. Russell's teams used Belgian Malinois trained for offensive operations. These were not guard dogs. They were weapons with teeth, capable of running down fleeing insurgents and holding them until operators arrived. The psychological impact on the enemy was profound. Taliban fighters who might stand and fight against men would flee in terror from the dogs. The technical sophistication of Russell's operations extended to his use of advanced night vision technology. While most military forces still use standard dual-tube night vision goggles, Russell and his key operators employed GPN VG-18 quad-eye systems. These panoramic night vision devices provided a 100-degree field of view, eliminating the tunnel vision that plagued traditional night vision. In close-quarters combat, where threats can appear from any angle, this peripheral awareness was the difference between life and survival. Russell personally tested and approved every piece of kit his operators carried, ensuring that November Squadron had the best equipment available. Technology and training could only take them so far. The real secret to November Squadron's success was the culture Russell cultivated. He demanded absolute aggression tempered by perfect discipline. His operators were not wild men. They were controlled violence personified. Every move was practiced until it became muscle memory. Every contingency was planned for. And when the mission went sideways, as combat always does, they adapted with terrifying speed. This flexibility came from trust, the knowledge that every man in the stack would execute his role without hesitation. The command structure Russell implemented was radically different from traditional military hierarchy. While most units relied on constant radio communication and top-down decision-making, Russell gave his team leaders enormous autonomy. Once the mission began, they operated independently within his overall intent. If a team leader saw an opportunity to flank an enemy position or needed to adjust the assault plan, he made the call without waiting for permission. This decentralized command worked because Russell had trained them to think like him, to prioritize aggression and speed over caution. The enemy adapted to this threat through terror tactics and asymmetric warfare. Knowing they could not defeat November Squadron in direct combat, Taliban forces began using more sophisticated IED networks and ambush tactics. Roadways became death traps. Compounds were rigged with explosives designed to eliminate entire assault teams. The battlefield evolved into a lethal chess match where every move carried the risk of catastrophic loss. Russell responded by making his teams even more unpredictable. They inserted from unexpected vectors, varied their tactics constantly, and struck with such overwhelming force that the enemy never had time to execute their defenses. One innovation that became synonymous with Russell's leadership was the use of ultralight vehicles for rapid insertion. While American forces relied on heavily armored MRAPs and mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles, the Australians used modified 6x6 long-range patrol vehicles. These were essentially armored dune buggies mounting heavy machine guns and automatic grenade launchers. They offered almost no protection from IEDs or heavy weapons fire. What they provided was speed and maneuverability. Russell's teams could race across the desert at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour, hitting compounds before the enemy knew they were coming and extracting before reinforcements arrived. The visual impact of these vehicles was psychological warfare. The Australians looked like post-apocalyptic raiders, long beards, non-standard equipment, weapons bristling from every mounting point. They wore Cry-Precision multicam uniforms modified for the extreme Afghan climate, with sleeves cut off and body armor reduced to the minimum necessary for mobility. To the Taliban, they were devils emerging from the darkness. To Allied forces, they were either inspiring or terrifying depending on your perspective. Russell cultivated this image deliberately. Fear is a weapon, and November Squadron wielded it with the same precision they applied to rifle fire. The integration of air-to-ground coordination under Russell's command reached levels of sophistication rarely seen outside of American JSOC units. He maintained constant communication with overhead assets, drones providing real-time intelligence, attack helicopters ready to deliver precision fires, and AC-130 gunships that could rain destruction from the sky. During one particularly intense firefight, Russell's team was pinned down by heavy machine gun fire from a fortified position. Rather than withdraw or wait for reinforcements, he called in an Apache helicopter strike with the aircraft firing within 30 meters of his position. The risk was enormous. One miscalculation would have eliminated his entire team. The pilot executed perfectly. The enemy position ceased to exist, and the assault continued without pause. This willingness to accept calculated risk defined Russell's approach to leadership. He understood that combat is inherently dangerous and that trying to eliminate all risk leads to paralysis. Instead, he trained his operators to manage risk through speed, aggression, and superior skill. When faced with a choice between a cautious approach that gave the enemy time to prepare and a violent assault that risked casualties but maximized surprise, Russell always chose aggression. This philosophy produced results. November Squadron's performance metrics were extraordinary, a testament to the effectiveness of controlled violence over defensive tactics. The operational tempo during Russell's command was unsustainable by normal standards. Operators were conducting high-risk direct action missions every 2 to 3 days, with minimal rest between operations. The physical demands were crushing. Carrying over 40 kilograms of weapons, ammunition, body armor, and equipment through mountainous terrain in extreme heat would break most men. But Russell set the standard. If his operators saw their commander matching them step for step, breach for breach, they found reserves of strength they did not know they possessed. Leading from the front is a cliché in military circles. Russell made it a combat multiplier. The complexity of modern Tier 1 operations extends far beyond pulling triggers. Every mission required coordination with intelligence agencies, Afghan National Army partners, coalition forces, and various support elements. Russell managed this bureaucratic nightmare while maintaining operational security and mission focus. He had to balance the aggressive instincts of his operators with the political realities of operating in a foreign country with restrictive rules of engagement. The fact that November Squadron maintained such a high operational tempo without significant friendly fire incidents or civilian casualty controversies speaks to Russell's ability to manage both violence and politics. One tactical innovation Russell implemented was the integration of female cultural support team members into direct action raids. These were specially trained women who could interact with Afghan women and children during compound clearances, gathering intelligence and managing non-combatants without violating cultural norms. While the men cleared rooms and engaged enemy fighters, the CST members would secure women and children, search them for weapons or intelligence, and maintain order in the chaos of a raid. This integration made operations smoother and reduced the risk of civilian casualties, a constant concern in counterinsurgency warfare. The sniper element of November Squadron under Russell's command operated with devastating effectiveness. Australian SASR snipers are among the best in the world, trained to engage targets at extreme distances with first-round precision. Russell used them as both overwatch protection and offensive weapons. Before an assault began, snipers would eliminate sentries and external guards, allowing the assault team to reach the breach point undetected. During the assault, they provided precision fire support, engaging threats that the close quarters teams could not reach. The psychological impact of knowing that a sniper could end your life from over a kilometer away kept many enemy fighters from engaging, effectively suppressing resistance before the assault even began. The weapons systems employed by these snipers were state-of-the-art. The Barrett M82 A150 caliber rifle could punch through walls and light vehicles, eliminating threats in hardened positions. The Accuracy International rifles chambered in .338 Lapua Magnum provided precision at extreme range with manageable recoil. Russell ensured his snipers had access to the best optics, suppressors, and ammunition available. When a November Squadron sniper took a shot, the target went down. Period. The close-quarters battle techniques Russell's teams employed represented the cutting edge of tactical development. Traditional CQB doctrine emphasized verbal commands, methodical clearance, and constant communication. Russell's teams operated in near-total silence. They had trained together so extensively that they moved as a single organism, each operator intuitively knowing where his teammates were and what they would do next. This telepathic coordination allowed them to clear rooms at speeds that shocked even other Tier 1 units. The double-tap synchronization they achieved, where two operators would fire simultaneously at the same target creating a sound signature like a single shot, became legendary. The enemy learned to fear the silence. Taliban fighters knew that loud raids with lots of shouting and flashbangs meant they might have time to escape or organize resistance. When November Squadron hit a compound, there was no warning, just the explosive crack of a breaching charge followed by suppressed gunfire and then silence again. By the time defenders realized they were under attack, they were already neutralized or fleeing. This psychological advantage was as valuable as any weapon system. Russell's personal weapons handling skills were extraordinary. He could transition from rifle to pistol in under a second, engage multiple targets with headshots at combat speeds, and clear malfunctions without conscious thought. These were not party tricks. In close quarters combat, where engagements happen at ranges measured in meters and fractions of seconds, superior gun handling skills directly translate to survival. Russell trained constantly, shooting thousands of rounds every month to maintain the muscle memory that made his movements instinctive. His operators followed his example, creating a unit where even the newest members shot better than elite operators in most other units. The mental aspects of command under such intense operational pressure cannot be overstated. Russell had to make decisions that would result in men living or going down, often with incomplete information and under fire. The cognitive load of tracking multiple assault teams, coordinating air support, monitoring intelligence feeds, and personally engaging in combat would overwhelm most people. Russell thrived on it. He possessed the rare ability to maintain situational awareness across multiple levels of combat simultaneously, seeing both the tactical details and the strategic picture without losing focus on either. This cognitive flexibility extended to his pre-mission planning. Russell would game out every possible contingency, developing responses to enemy actions before they happened. If the assault team encountered unexpected resistance, he already had a flanking maneuver planned. If the target fled, blocking forces were in position. If civilians complicated the clearance, procedures were in place to manage them safely. This exhaustive planning did not make missions rigid. Instead, it gave his teams the mental framework to adapt quickly when reality deviated from the plan. The intelligence cycle that fed into November Squadron's targeting was sophisticated and multi-layered. Human intelligence from local sources, signals, intelligence from intercepted communications, and imagery intelligence from drones and satellites all funneled into target development. Russell worked closely with intelligence analysts to identify high-value targets and understand the enemy network. This close integration between operations and intelligence created a kill chain that moved faster than the enemy could react. A Taliban commander might be identified in the morning and eliminated that same night, before he even knew he had been compromised. The political complexity of operating in Afghanistan added another layer of challenge. Rules of engagement restricted when and how force could be used. Afghan partners required coordination and respect, despite often having very different tactical approaches. International coalition partners had to be managed. Media scrutiny meant that every operation would be examined for potential violations of laws of war. Russell navigated this minefield while maintaining aggressive operations, a balancing act that required both tactical skill and political sophistication. The impact of November Squadron's operations extended far beyond the direct enemy casualties they inflicted. High-value target removal disrupted Taliban networks, forcing the enemy to constantly replace leaders and rebuild command structures. The psychological impact of relentless raids degraded enemy morale. Taliban fighters began avoiding areas where November Squadron operated, ceding terrain without a fight. Intelligence gathered during raids led to additional targets, creating a snowball effect where each successful mission enabled future operations. This operational momentum was Russell's gift to the broader war effort. The relationship between Australian Special Air Service Regiment operators and their American counterparts evolved during this period. Initially, there was skepticism. The Americans had more resources, better equipment, and decades of Tier 1 operational experience. The Australians were seen as competent, but not in the same league as Delta Force or SEAL Team 6. Russell's November Squadron changed that perception. American operators who worked alongside the Australians came away impressed and sometimes unsettled by their aggressive tactics and willingness to take risks that U.S. doctrine would reject. A new respect developed, built on demonstrated battlefield effectiveness rather than reputation. This respect manifested in operational integration. Joint missions became common, with Australian and American Special Operations Forces working side by side. Russell's ability to coordinate multinational operations added another dimension to his skill set. He had to understand not just Australian tactics, but also American procedures, ensuring that operators from different countries could work together seamlessly under fire. The fact that these joint missions succeeded without significant friction speaks to Russell's diplomatic skills as much as his tactical prowess. The technical aspects of modern direct action raids involve more than just shooting. Breaching charges must be precisely placed to create entry points without excessive collateral damage. Room clearance patterns must be adapted to the specific architecture of Afghan compounds. Rules of engagement must be followed even in the chaos of close-quarters combat. Medical capabilities must be immediately available to treat casualties. Communications must be maintained with higher headquarters while preserving operational security. Russell managed all these moving pieces while personally leading assaults, a feat of multitasking that few commanders could match. The extraction phase of operations often proved as dangerous as the assault. Once a target was secured, the team had to withdraw through potentially hostile territory with any captured intelligence or prisoners. Attack helicopters provided overwatch while the ground force moved to the extraction point. If the enemy attempted to interfere, Russell had the authority to call in overwhelming firepower. Several times, Taliban forces tried to ambush withdrawing November Squadron elements. Each time, the combination of superior training, better equipment, and responsive air support turned the ambush into a one-sided engagement. The enemy learned that attacking and extracting Australian Special Air Service team was a fatal mistake. Russell's understanding of battlefield medicine and casualty evacuation procedures saved lives. Every operator in November Squadron was trained in tactical combat casualty care, capable of treating gunshot wounds, controlling bleeding, and managing airways under fire, but training only matters if the culture supports its use. Russell created an environment where immediate medical response was as ingrained as weapons handling. When an operator went down, his teammates would secure the area and begin treatment within seconds. Casualty evacuation procedures were rehearsed until they became automatic. This medical readiness meant that injuries which might have been fatal in other units were survivable in November Squadron. The role of combat medics in Russell's operations cannot be overstated. These highly trained professionals carried the same weapons and conducted the same assaults as the shooters, but they also carried advanced medical equipment and possessed the skills to perform life-saving procedures under fire. They were not support personnel hiding in the rear. They were operators who happened to have medical training, and Russell used them to extend the survivability envelope of his entire force. Their presence gave operators confidence that if they were hit, they would receive immediate world-class medical care. The degradation of equipment under combat conditions posed constant challenges. Weapons that were meticulously maintained at base would malfunction in the dust and heat of Afghan operations. Night vision devices would fail at critical moments. Communications equipment would drop signals in mountainous terrain. Russell's operators became expert field mechanics, capable of performing emergency repairs under fire. This technical proficiency was another force multiplier, allowing November Squadron to maintain operational capability even when equipment failed. The relationship between Australian Special Air Service Regiment and Afghan National Army Special Operations Forces was complex. The Australians were supposed to mentor and partner with Afghan commandos, building their capability to conduct independent operations. In practice, this often meant Australian operators doing the heavy lifting while Afghan partners provided cultural knowledge and legitimacy. Russell managed this partnership with pragmatism. He used his Afghan counterparts when they added value and worked around them when they did not. The goal was mission success, not political correctness. The targeting of high-value individuals required careful legal and ethical consideration. Every direct action raid had to be justified under the laws of armed conflict and approved by higher headquarters. Intelligence had to be solid enough to support lethal action. Civilians had to be protected to the maximum extent possible. Russell operated within these constraints while maintaining aggressive operations, a testament to both his understanding of international law and his ability to build solid intelligence cases for targeting. The legal scrutiny that followed his career years later would examine these decisions in detail, but during active operations, his missions were approved and supported by the chain of command. The night raid became the signature tactic of Russell's command. Darkness provided multiple advantages: the element of surprise, degraded enemy vision while the Australians operated with advanced night vision, and reduced risk to civilians who were typically asleep during raids. Russell's teams perfected the art of the midnight assault, moving silently through enemy territory, hitting compounds with overwhelming violence, and extracting before the sun rose. The psychological impact of these raids was devastating. Taliban commanders knew they were not safe even in their own beds. This constant pressure degraded enemy effectiveness and morale. The integration of signals intelligence into direct action operations provided a decisive advantage. Intercepted communications revealed enemy locations, intentions, and capabilities. Russell's teams exploited this intelligence ruthlessly, hitting targets before they could disperse or reinforce. The kill chain from intelligence collection to trigger pull compressed to hours instead of days. This operational speed kept the enemy constantly off balance, unable to predict or prepare for the next raid. The Taliban's communication networks became a liability, feeding information to the very forces hunting them. The physical environment of Afghanistan added another layer of difficulty to operations. Extreme heat during summer months, freezing cold at altitude, dust storms that reduced visibility to zero, and mountainous terrain that exhausted even the fittest operators. Russell's teams adapted to these conditions through superior physical conditioning and tactical flexibility. They operated in weather that grounded most air assets. They patrolled through terrain that conventional forces considered impassable. This willingness to operate in conditions that stopped other units gave them opportunities the enemy did not expect. The balance between speed and security in direct action raids is one of the fundamental tactical tensions. Move too fast and you walk into ambushes or miss threats. Move too slowly and you lose surprise while giving the enemy time to prepare. Russell's teams found the perfect balance through thousands of hours of training and combat experience. They moved with aggressive speed but maintained tactical discipline. They cleared rooms in seconds, but did not miss corners. This combination of velocity and precision made them devastatingly effective. Leadership in maintaining unit cohesion under extreme stress is critical. Operators in November Squadron saw horrific violence, lived in primitive conditions, and were separated from families for months at a time. Lesser commanders would have seen morale collapse or discipline break down. Russell maintained unit effectiveness through personal example and clear communication. He shared the hardships his men endured. He explained the strategic importance of their missions. He recognized excellence and corrected failures quickly. This approach created a unit that remained sharp and effective even after months of continuous operations. The tactical use of suppressed weapons in close-quarters battle provided significant advantages. Suppressors reduced the sound signature of gunfire, making it harder for the enemy to locate shooters and coordinate responses. They also reduced muzzle flash, preserving night vision and making it harder for enemies to target the source of fire. Russell ensured his entire squadron was equipped with high-quality suppressors and trained in their tactical employment. The result was a unit that could engage targets in near silence, adding to the psychological terror of their raids. The exploitation phase of direct action raids often yielded intelligence that enabled future operations. Documents, computers, phones, and other materials captured during raids revealed enemy networks, plans, and capabilities. Russell's teams were trained in sensitive site exploitation, quickly processing and securing intelligence materials before extraction. This intelligence fed back into the targeting cycle, creating a self-reinforcing loop where each successful raid enabled additional operations. The intelligence value of direct action raids sometimes exceeded their immediate tactical impact. Individual operator skill and team effectiveness create a complex relationship. A team of individually skilled shooters will not necessarily operate effectively together without cohesion and shared tactical language. Russell built both. His operators were individually world-class, but more importantly, they functioned as a seamless unit. This combination of individual excellence and team cohesion created a force that could adapt to any tactical situation and overcome any obstacle through combined skill. The evolution of Russell's tactical thinking over multiple combat rotations reflected the changing nature of the Afghan conflict. Early missions focused on disrupting Taliban command and control through high-value target removal. As the conflict progressed, the emphasis shifted to degrading enemy networks and securing key terrain. Russell adapted his tactics to match strategic objectives while maintaining his core philosophy of aggressive direct action. This tactical flexibility kept November Squadron relevant and effective throughout the campaign. The legacy of Russell's command extends beyond the immediate tactical results. He trained a generation of Australian Special Air Service Regiment operators in his methods. His tactics were studied and adopted by other units. The culture of aggressive professionalism he cultivated influenced the broader special operations community. Years later, operators who served under his command would apply his lessons in other conflicts, multiplying the impact of his leadership far beyond his direct command. The transition from combat operations to peacetime posed challenges for men who had spent years operating at the highest levels of intensity. Russell's operators were conditioned for constant action, hardwired for violence and speed. Returning to routine garrison life required a mental shift that not everyone could make successfully. The skills that made them devastating in combat could be liabilities in civilian contexts. Russell understood this transition challenge and worked to prepare his men for life after the battlefield. The toll of sustained combat operations on equipment and logistics systems was enormous. Helicopters required constant maintenance, weapons needed replacement parts, ammunition stocks had to be replenished, night vision devices degraded, body armor wore out. Russell's ability to maintain operational readiness required constant attention to logistics and maintenance, the unglamorous work that enables everything else. His operators might be warriors, but someone had to ensure they had working weapons and functioning equipment when they stepped off the helicopter into hostile territory. The complexity of modern counterinsurgency warfare required Russell to understand not just tactical operations, but also strategic context. Every raid had potential political implications. Every civilian casualty risked turning the population against coalition forces. Every destroyed compound had to be justified and investigated. Russell operated in this constrained environment while maintaining aggressive operations, a balancing act that required both tactical skill and political awareness. The fact that November Squadron conducted over 100 missions without significant political blowback during his command speaks to his ability to manage this complexity. The integration of tactical psychology into operations gave Russell's teams additional advantages. Understanding how the enemy thought, what they feared, and how they would react allowed for more effective tactics. The use of psychological operations to amplify the terror effect of raids, the careful cultivation of a fearsome reputation, and the exploitation of enemy cultural vulnerabilities all contributed to operational success. Russell fought not just with weapons, but with fear, using the enemy's psychology against them. The final measure of Russell's effectiveness as a commander comes down to results. November Squadron, under his leadership, conducted over 100 direct action raids with extraordinary success rates. They eliminated dozens of high-value targets, disrupted enemy networks across Uruzgan Province, and suffered minimal casualties despite operating in one of the most dangerous environments on Earth. These results speak for themselves. Whatever debates might exist about tactics or methods, the operational effectiveness of his command remains undeniable. Every aggressive combat leader faces questions about where the line exists between necessary violence and excess. Russell operated in a gray zone where rules of engagement met battlefield reality, where intelligence was often incomplete, and where split-second decisions determined life and survival. He made thousands of tactical decisions under fire, each one carrying potential consequences that would be examined years later in peacetime. The tension between wartime necessity and peacetime judgment is a burden every combat leader carries, and Russell would bear this weight long after the missions ended.